Introduction to, what is it? Introduction to counseling. And I'm not exactly sure how to run this class, because one of the things that happened was that the individual that was supposed to be teaching this class in Tuba City resigned. So now what we've done is roll that class into this class. This was just supposed to be a classroom class for me. The class is actually full. I think we've got 18. Somebody just called me and asked me if I would sign off on another, so sure, why not? The more the merrier, but it looks like we've got like 30 people in this class. I don't know what's going to happen. One of the things that I want to do in this is let you practice counseling. Which is going to be interesting, because what you have to do is develop an alter ego that's not you. Okay. So what we have to do is you need to come up with a problem that not only you don't have, but you've never had, and also isn't something that you have seen in your family, because the closer it is to somebody that you know, the more likely that you will react in a negative manner to it. Okay. One of the biggest problems we have in counseling is that if a counselor has a problem, they will project that problem on their clients, and that's of course something that we try to stay away from. And this is one of the reasons why, if you start a counseling program, if you start in a counseling program or you want to be a counselor, one of the things that they do is you will be counseled as to find out what type of problems you have. The reality is that most psychologists become psychologists because they're trying to figure something out about themselves. And I'm not saying everybody has a problem. What I'm saying is that a lot of times people will become a psychologist or a counselor in order to try to figure out a problem in their own lives. And if they don't resolve that problem before they start counseling, now we got a real serious problem, because every time somebody comes in with a similar problem, they start projecting their own problems on this other individual. So instead of helping that individual cure themselves or help themselves, what they're doing is they're actually dealing with themselves. And this is really kind of a serious problem if you think about it. It's kind of interesting, talking to other counselors, you can see that, oh my goodness, this person has this problem. And you just wonder, wow, I hope they don't have to deal with this as they're dealing with their clients, if they have a client with a similar problem. You see a lot of counselors with interesting problems. That being said, one of the things that we need to do, one of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like for you guys to practice counseling. And in order to do that, and in order not to have to deal with any of the problems that you've had, or to cause you to have more serious problems with this, because of course we're not professional counselors yet, this is just an introductory class, you need to stay away from any possible problems that you have. So when you take on your new identity, and the new identity needs to be as complete as you can possibly make it. When you take on the new identity, you need to make sure that it isn't a problem that you actually do have. So if you have been an alcoholic in the past, I'm not saying that anybody's been an alcoholic in the past, you certainly don't want to deal with that. If you have alcoholism in your family, you certainly don't want to deal with that. Because what you'll be doing is projecting that individual onto your problem, and now you're not really fixing anything, because you're pretending to be an individual with that problem, but you're taking on the problem of some selected other individual. Of course, you're not really helping that individual, and it may make you feel worse about that situation. So you need to select a problem that you don't have, and that nobody close to you has. Okay? Does all that make sense? Okay, good. Since there's only 3 of us, 3 of you, one of me, of course, I never count myself. This is a health history. Come up with some strange and bizarre name, if you like. something, anything, it doesn't really matter. One of the things that you're going to, one of the aspects of this is that you need to determine your race. You can try to be another race if you want to. It's not easy because a lot of what we know about other groups of individuals are stereotypes. So that may be relatively inaccurate. So you may be better off just being, being native, unless of course you were raised off the reservation. Anyway. Yeah, you need to be as accurate as possible. And the better an actor you are, the more it's going to help the person that's doing the counseling. Okay, does all that make sense? All right, good. Let me hand out some.
So, fill this out and hand it in to you, or?
Yeah, and you get points for that, as you're going to see when I hand out this thing.
How soon do you do this?
How soon do I need that? I don't think we start counseling until the 5th or 6th week. So not only that, but when you determine what your problem is, then you have to write a paper on that problem. So if you're...
So this is just kind of like acting?
Yeah.
Okay.
As cool as that is. And the better actor you are, the more it's going to help the people that are practicing with you or on you or whatever, however you like to look at it.
I've worked with security for 8 years, so came across all kinds of people with so many mental disabilities.
There you go.
So.
And nothing, of course, that you have, no problem that you have. You go,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
Oh, identical twins. My identical twins. Let's come into security. Yeah, you should be able to do a pretty good job. Now, what is eventually going to happen is we're going to be counseling about once a week, and for maybe 30 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. So this history needs to be fairly extensive. You need to find a background. You need to figure out a problem. Why in the world is this person coming in? And I will also create an alter ego. It's the same one that I always have, which is kind of interesting. I'm not a drinker, so my alter ego is a drunk, which is a lot of fun for me. Have we seen a lot of drunks? Too many, okay? I used to work in the emergency room, and by golly, they always seem to be falling down or something. Something's happening to them. Okay, the book is a really good book. I was really impressed with this book. Sarah picked it, so when I got here last year, she had already ordered this book for this class. It's actually a very, very good book. If you want to go into social work or you want to go into psychological counseling, this is a really good introductory text to use. It's 3 women out of Indiana University have put this thing together. It's a good basic text. So there will be 15 quizzes, 1 for each chapter. I don't know. The chapters are kind of short, or relatively short, so I kind of had to really scroll around to try to figure out some quiz questions for each chapter, but I figured it out. Anyway, so those are kind of gimme points if you think about it, because all the information, all the information for the quizzes will be on in the PowerPoints and in the text. Text is kind of small. Has anybody bought the text yet? Because I don't know how much it costs. Okay.
I think it's like $80, $87.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Brand new?
I ordered it, so hopefully it's here right
Oh,
away.
yeah. Well, unfortunately, the people in Tuba City, Professor Jones was going to use a different textbook, and unfortunately, they've already ordered the other textbook. But this is a good textbook. I don't know his textbook. I've never taught out of his textbook, but we're going to use this one because, well, I'm already prepared to teach out of this textbook instead of change. So And I apologize to the people in Tuba City. I apologize to the people in Tuba City. We thought we had another professor that would work out there, but he resigned last week, and now I've taken on most of his classes. Well, 3 out of 4 of his classes. One of his classes didn't make. Oh, health psychology didn't make it. Anyway, so most of his classes, we just rolled them into my classes. And there is a problem with this textbook, but this is the only one, so that's kind of amazing if you think about it, I think. Yeah. So he was going to be teaching 4 classes, and 3 of the textbooks were exactly the same. Okay, so there will be 15 quizzes. You do have a 5-page paper. It should be, the paper will be on the problem that you decide that you have, your new problem. And the reason that you're writing a research paper on your problem is because you need to understand how to act when you're acting like somebody with whatever your problem happens to be. OCD, ADHD, I don't know, whatever. Anyway. There are discussion questions with each chapter. I think there's only 13, but we'll pretend it's 150 points. This fictional biography is worth 50 points. We're going to be doing weekly class participation. Somehow we're going to be working with the individuals from Tuba City online, and I haven't quite figured that one out yet, but we'll talk about that. And you guys know more about the internet than I do. Maybe you have an idea. I don't know about Skyping. Skyping you have to sign up for. And, that would be nice if we could Skype, but I don't think that's probably going to work. We'll probably have to do something online, maybe a telephone conversation. I don't know. They do counseling online, but I think it's probably through Skype. I'm guessing it is something like that. So I'll troll around and see if I can figure this out. Of course, I have to do it in the next couple of weeks. So you have a fictional biography, a weekly class participation points, although that's the counseling thing, and then a final counseling session. I may take those 100 points out because I don't know how we're going to do that. We will keep a file on each of your fictional characters, but I think we'll probably be doing that online. I haven't quite figured that one out either. I'll have to talk to the people over at IT and see if there's some repository where we can put these things. That way you can take your notes as you're counseling somebody and then go online and write up your notes. Okay, write them up. Your notes are the file, the patient's file is, the courts can access those files if they choose to. Usually they don't, they try not to, they try to maintain client counselor privileges. That's not the right word. Confidentiality, I'm sorry, used the wrong word. But sometimes if there is a problem, like somebody shoots somebody or goes into a mall and blows everybody away, they will access their mental health records. If they're dead, of course, I'm sorry, if they have died, then of course they can access those files anyway. So you have to be careful. The bottom line is you have to be careful as to what you put in there. Your notes are usually not, they cannot subpoena your notes unless it's an extreme case, and they usually won't try to subpoena your notes. And of course, you may not be a person that takes notes anyway, so it's really kind of hard to subpoena something that's not there. Okay. Any questions about what we're going to be doing in here? Usually, as long as you show up to class, usually there's not a whole lot of trouble with passing this class. One of the things I will tell you over and over and over again is that there's not just one way to be a good counselor. My techniques will be different from other people's techniques. Your techniques will be different from my techniques, and that's okay. We all have our different ways of communicating with the people in our, that we're dealing with.
So is it a weekly quiz that you said?
It's a chapter.
Or chapter quiz?
Chapter by chapter, yeah.
So
As
is
soon
it
as
going to be done here, or do we have to do it online?
Oh, no, it's on, everything's online,
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
On Blackboard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These counseling sessions, do we do them with a partner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll be doing them with a partner. And potentially, or eventually, if I can figure this out, eventually what you'll be doing is you'll be not only counseling people in here, but also people into the city. Now, the reality is, I think there's 30 people in the class. That was the count that I got just before I came to class today. That's a lot of people, and you're not going to be able to counsel everybody. Well, what I'd like to do is for each individual we'll rotate so that you don't have to counsel the same person twice. Is this realistic? Yeah, initially, when you go into a situation where you are a counselor, you will be doing a lot of entry work as far as the clients are concerned. Will you see the same client over and over and over again? Eventually, of course, that's the way it works out. But in the beginning, a lot of times, different counselors will see the same client, a series of clients, and then they will ask the client, which counselor would you like, or vice versa. They'll ask the counselor, do you want to take this case on? And then of course, eventually you'll get to counsel them over and over and over again so that to create continuity. But we're going to create continuity with the files. So one of the things that you will be doing is looking at the files, reading the history, the individual's history, reading what the other person has said, the other people that have counseled this individual, so that you can move from that point. Okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. We need practice. And if you just practice with somebody with depression, you're going to be a specialist as far as depression is concerned, but you need to deal with whatever other problems that we have in the class that are represented in the classroom. Yeah.
So could we research like potential diagnosis before?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the realities, and this is one of the problems with psychology, is that there is no cut and dried diagnosis. I was arguing with somebody dealing with what were we talking about? Asperger's. We're talking about Asperger's. Does this person have Asperger's, or do they have ADHD, or is it some form of autism? And you'll get different psychologists that will diagnose differently. And that's okay, that's fine. But we have some psychologists that always diagnose to the negative, and we have others that diagnose to the positive. As a matter of fact, cognitive psychologists, I've tangled with cognitive psychologists before, a lot of times they don't want to assign a diagnosis. Of course, in order to get paid, you have to diagnose something. You have to give them a problem, or of course they've come in with a problem. So you have to say that this is a temporary problem, that they need 15 counseling sessions. Insurance will only pay if you determine that the individual has a problem. And of course, insurance will only pay a select amount anyway, so you get 10 shots to fix this person with depression that they pay for, that the insurance pays for. Normally what will happen if somebody comes in with depression, the insurance company determines that they're going to pay for 10 counseling sessions. After the 10th counseling session, they always have the alternative to pay for it themselves. But a lot of times that's not going to happen. So as soon as the insurance runs out, everything else runs out as well. Okay. We're going to stop at 10 o'clock just in case you guys need to go someplace for the eclipse, because the eclipse starts at about 10:30. That ought to give you enough time to...
Are you going to watch the eclipse?
I am, but I can't.
You're not supposed to look at it.
You're not supposed to look at it. I'm afraid, this is probably the only class being held today, so, oh, man.
I want to go to that Avery Denny's class. I'm not sure where it's to be held at.
At the
I think
sub activity room?
Somebody's doing the sub and somebody's doing 199.
Avery's doing the one at the sub.
Okay.
Wilson or Ronald's at the room 199 downstairs,
Okay.
and then Roger Benali's at the Hogan.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which one's best?
Okay.
I'm gonna go to Wilson's downstairs so I don't have to go outside.
Yeah.
I don't wanna be walking around out there when it's almost there.
It goes in that too.
Yeah.
Everybody else in the world is out going, woo! And
Yeah.
you guys are going,
It's all over the Today Show this morning.
My wife is driving my grandson. I was already talking to Curtis about this. They're down in Florida, and she stopped last night in Macon, so they'll be driving right through the heaviest part of the
Eclipse.
eclipse.
Wow.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll be in Tennessee by the time it starts. I doubt, probably not. They'll probably still be trying to get through Atlanta. Anyway, so they'll get to see she'll be driving through the eclipse.
So how was your summer off?
Well, I can talk about that. My daughter was having problems with custody of her child, so we were fighting about that all summer. She's got a new job in Iowa. She lives in Florida, and they're moving up to Iowa. But the argument was, would she get custody of the grandson? Well, of course she's going to have custody. He doesn't really want custody. He just wants access to the child. So he was trying to keep her in Florida. It was a real ugly situation. And so they're fighting about whether she can move or not. And the laws down in Florida state that if there's a custodial parent and there's a non-custodial parent, they have to live within 50 miles of one another so that they have access. I know, this is kind of ugly. They were never married. They didn't even live together after the baby was born. But he still has custody. He still has non-custodial custody. The job in Iowa was much better. I don't know. It was just a really sad situation. The baby's never. He's 5. What am I talking about? He's a big boy. I'm sorry, did I say baby? I meant big boy. So he's a big boy. So all summer we were fighting with that. Trying to find a house for her to live in Iowa. She already had a job. Fabulous.
Wow.
I know it was a good situation, but all my whole summer was taken up looking for houses and worrying about whether my daughter would get to move up or not. The sad thing was that she had to look for a job in Florida at the same time, just in case. So she had 2 jobs at the same time. So she had to make somebody was disappointed that she wasn't going to go there. She's really good at her job. Anyway, yeah, so I had a pretty bad summer. I haven't seen my wife for about a month. Anyway, I know, it's a tragedy. So she's driving up from Florida right now to Iowa. Somebody has to take care of the dogs, right? my daughter.
How many dogs do you have?
Just the 2.
Okay.
One of them is the size of a pony, and the other one only weighs 35 pounds. Okay. Any questions about anything so far?
How can, no,
No, that's fine.
that's fine.
Okay. So yeah, it's actually a 5-page history. This is, I stole this off the internet. I can't remember, some place in Pennsylvania. This is the mental health history that they use. It's fairly comprehensive, so you're going to have to make up a lot of really strange stuff about your client, whether they're married or not, their age.
So how, like, I don't know how to word it, but how is there like a limit to who we choose, as like, I guess, a client for this? Like, like from someone who's suffering from depression or someone who's like the serial killer? Or is it like, are you limiting that? Or can we
Am I
just-
going to limit that? So
Like the
should,
severity of
the severity of the problem that they have. The problem with making coming up with a alter ego that is too severe is that you'll have to act like that person.
Mhm.
Okay, so the more severe it is, the more research you're going to have to do as to how they act.
I've done plenty of research, that's what I was asking.
Okay, that's okay. So I have no problem with you. If you want to be schizophrenic, go ahead. It's the toughest one to act. Disorganized schizophrenic is really kind of easy because they never make any sense anyway. I mean, the words get jumbled when they come out, so that's kind of interesting. And the other thing is, it's nice. Schizophrenia is really kind of interesting because when they have a relapse, when they're in crisis, they're almost impossible to deal with. So there's not a whole lot you can do with them at that stage, except medicate. And once you medicate them, theoretically they have too much dopamine, so they're getting all this stimulation and whatnot. Schizophrenia is kind of a tough one. It's a tough one to act. People that act like they have schizophrenia, a lot of times it will take them time to decompress from an actor or someone. They will have to take a couple months off so that they can recenter themselves. As odd as that seems, I wouldn't suggest something really severe. I wouldn't suggest schizophrenia. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, and potentially the reality is that we may be on the edge of schizophrenia anyway. People that smoke. What we have discovered is with schizophrenia anyway. What we've discovered that if you have a proclivity for a mental illness, and you do something that changes the chemical structure in your brain, like snort cocaine. I think we've talked about that. The snort cocaine or smoke pot as non-intrusive as pot is supposed to be, what we've discovered is if you have a proclivity for schizophrenia, it will kick you into schizophrenia. So it will project you into schizophrenia much, much faster than you would otherwise. Does all that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So, my only fear, if you want to have a character with schizophrenia, my only fear is that it may take you a little while to get, because you're going to be acting like you have schizophrenia. So, all those bizarre thoughts and whatnot. So you're going to have to be coming up with those bizarre thoughts. It may be easier to do something a little less destructive. Yes, ma'am.
What if I select someone that drinks too much?
That's okay, as long as you've never been a drinker, as long as you've never been a drinker and you don't have anybody close to you that is a drinker. Because otherwise you'll be projecting their problems and it may cause you damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've got a brother that is a drinker. And I'm not very close to him, so it doesn't bother me to act like I'm a drinker. But if I were really close to my brother, me acting like my brother may actually make me have the problem also. Depression is the same.
That's the same way with me. It's my brother, but I'm not close to him. I don't live near him.
Then no, you can do it. That's fine. As long as you're not close to that individual. As long as you don't have a real depth of feeling for this individual, then you won't identify with them as directly. Somebody that has seen a lot of stuff, somebody who's seen a lot of stuff, I don't project those, and it's one of the reasons that I'm so callous, and people have complained about how callous I am in class. I talk about things, and it doesn't bother me, and it bothers people who have that problem in there. But I'm callous. I'm relatively callous, and it's because you got to do that. You got to create a shell so that You know, you don't take on everybody's problems.
Yeah.
And this happens in the emergency room, probably happens in law enforcement as well.
Yeah.
You can't take on their problems, otherwise you want to go to their house and, you know, mow their lawn and cut wood for them or whatever.
You can't
You know,
become personal.
Yeah, you can't take it personally, exactly. I really have a lot of fun with this class. We can get a lot done. And it will help you. I've been teaching this class for about 25 years, off and on, of course, not continuously. And this is about the best way that you can learn whether you should be a counselor or not. Some individuals are too sensitive, and if you're too sensitive, then one of the problems you're going to have is you're going to be taking on all your clients' problems. It's going, and it'll hurt you, it'll bother you. You'll go home at night and you won't be able to sleep because, you know, Sally's husband's hitting her again, you know. So somebody as callous as I am, it doesn't bother you. Go ahead, beat Sally if you want. It's nothing.
Just want to share this. Just want to share it.
Okay.
Back home, there's a lot of positions in counseling,
Right.
and it's under the Department of Behavioral Health Services, and they deal with drugs and alcohol, domestic violence, you name it.
Sure.
And those positions are not filled. They're not being filled, and
No.
nobody wants to talk to these people.
Right.
So I want to be there. I want to help someone, and it's counseling.
That's something I've noticed on this reservation. There's a lot of people that want to stay away from things like that. Okay. It's not especially that way everywhere, but it is here.
Yeah, I've noticed that because last week I went to some training, to some safe talk
Right.
about suicide
Right.
down at the dorms, and a lot of people were really uncomfortable with that topic of
Sure.
suicide. And what made it worse was that toward the end, they did like this mock session, and a lot of people were just, you know, they weren't taking it seriously, they were just laughing. So it just made it all more like, you know, people don't take mental health seriously as they should.
Right.
So I agree with that. People get uncomfortable with
Right.
that topic, especially with suicide.
Right. It may be that, and I don't know how to fix this problem. If this is a problem here on this reservation, then maybe you need somebody from off the reservation. You know, how many people from here can we find who will do the counseling? There's a lot of, you know, it's a spectrum of traditionalism. You know, how traditional are you? And if you're too traditional, of course, you can't listen to anybody else's problems. You don't want to even deal with the concept of death. So yeah, you know, this is a serious problem. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you need people from off the reservation, but of course, there's got to be somebody there to teach them what the traditions are so that they won't step on anybody's toes. You know, the students I had in class last year, and all three of you, of course, were in my classes, you helped me immensely by giving me information, telling me how to, you know, how to, this school's like a minefield sometimes. Sometimes you make mistakes and you don't even realize it's a mistake. So, and you guys helped me a ton last year. I really appreciate my students. This may be a mistake, holding class today. Sarah called off all of her classes. Christine's gone. I don't have no idea what Miranda's doing. You know, okay, that leaves Marius, and Marius doesn't come in until Wednesday. So here I am. I'm holding class. I've got 20 people that are supposed to be here. 3 of you have showed up. So I know I'm okay with the 3 of you, but I've got 17 people that are going to be shaking their fingers at me. And of course, Wilson comes in and shakes his finger at me all the time. Not pointing at me, but it's shaking his finger. Evidently, I represent all white people that have ever existed, so. Which is okay, because Wilson and I get along okay. But usually he comes in saying something, and, oh, here I am on tape. You Christians, well, I'm not a Christian, okay. Anyway, look what you've done. I guess if I were, I'd be more offended by what he has to say. But I appreciate all the help that you've given me last year and this year. I hope I don't step on anybody's toes.
I also have another question about counseling. Will you be going over like some of the guidelines of what not to say or to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the whole first of the book is about. So you will learn what to do and what not to do. Or they give you suggestions. We all have different personalities. Oh, how much time do I have? Let me talk about horses. I know, I hate horses. No offense to any horse. I apologize. I do not like horses. I've never ridden a horse. I own 2 horses up in Montana, and one of them hated me, despised me. Every time I tried to feed her, the mare,
Yeah.
she would get aggressive with the other horse, and sometimes that aggression would. And she weighs a ton, you know, and I weigh, what, 180 pounds, 190 pounds. She just knocked me all over the place, and she bit me a couple times, and kicked me 2 or 3 times. Anyway, let's talk about horses. I went to a conference in Vancouver over the holiday, and it was wonderful. The very first session that I went into was about equine therapy. Do you guys ride? Have you ever have you never been around horses? They bite you too? Okay. But you've been around horses. You've been around horses.
I got bucked off and landed in the cactus.
Oh my God.
Okay. But
That's the only.
that's the only
first
time
and
we had
last
anything to
time
do
I
with
got
horses.
on the horse.
Well, it's kind of interesting. They were talking about equine therapy. And what they'll do is they'll take somebody into a corral with horses. They will, well, if you've ever seen 28 Days with Sandra Bullock, where she's supposed to pick up the horse's leg, the horse can sense whether you are nervous or not. And if you're nervous, it won't do anything that you want it to do.
You're scared.
Right. If you're scared, then the horse won't react to you, or it will react negatively to you. So that's part of equine therapy. They were going through equine therapy. They were talking about about horses being a metaphor, and this made a lot of sense to me because their idea was that horses are herd animals. One horse will do what the other horse does. They follow each other. If you've ever watched a herd of antelope or a herd of deer, they follow each other. They don't just scatter like rabbits do. They will follow each other, and like birds flying in a flock of birds, they'll just keep following each other. And horses will do the same things. Cows will do the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why it's possible to take 5,000 cows and take them from one place to another, because they follow each other. And as long as you can get them going in the right direction, you're okay. So the idea was that when you go into a corral with a horse, with horses, one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to read what the horse is thinking. It's a lot of nonverbal communication going on between you and the horse. So you watch what the horse is doing, you watch where the horse's head is, you watch where the horse is looking, you try to determine whether the horse is frightened or not. Whether the horse is relaxed or not. So you have to read the horse in order to understand what's going on when you go into a corral, or when you're riding and going past a cactus. So you have to be able to understand what the horse is thinking. I have a very good friend up in Montana that trains people to ride horses, and she trains horses. And she says, some horses, their brains are just wired wrong or something, and you can't ever get them to do what you want them to do. But the idea is that you have to read horses. So as a counselor, one of the things that you have to do is you have to read your clients, especially the first time you see them. The reality is that you are an individual that wants to do something with this individual, but that client, when they first come in, you have to be able to read them. And what you're trying to read is their nonverbal communication. And it's just like dealing with horses. Okay. Horses are prey animals. We're used to being around cats, we're used to being around dogs, and interacting with these animals. Well, I guess sheep are the same way. I don't know, you guys, if you've ever been around sheep, they're, I don't know, they just run away all the time, don't they? But they all run in a flock. Okay, but so they are prey animals, and the reality is your clients are prey. Okay, so if you're used to interacting with something that is a predator, like a dog or a cat, that's something totally different. They have a sense of self, but a herd animal has a sense of group, and they are much easier to spook. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you think of being around horses, the more you've been around horses, the more this makes sense. You have to read the horse, and you learn to do this naturally. Cowboys, for example. And if you've ever been around cowboys, they're really kind of interesting. They don't talk a lot, and they're not very aggressive. They tend not to be very aggressive because as a cowboy dealing with not only horses but cows, you really can't be aggressive. Otherwise, you don't get a chance to do whatever it is that you want to do with it. You can't get close to them. So it's really kind of interesting. The better cowboys are actually readers of horses, or horse whisperers. And of course, as counselors, that's one of the things that we need to do. I was talking to Sarah the other day. I went to Gallup. Why did I go to Gallup? Oh, I needed to buy groceries for one thing. But why drive to Gallup? You can go drive to Chinle. It's so much closer. But I had to turn in a book on tape. I'd listened to a book on tape. And you can check them out at one Cracker Barrel, and you can turn them in someplace else. So that's why I had a book on tape, and I needed to turn it back in. So I'm at Cracker Barrel, so why not just eat there? So I sat, they took me back, and I was sitting all by myself, and there was a whole room of people, and I didn't realize that I did this, but when I go into a room of people, I try to read all the people in the room to see if there's anybody that's dangerous. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else, I hope nobody else does this. Most people don't even notice people. But I always do, and I always read what's going on in the room. There was an individual with a lot of tattoos on his arm, and he was sitting by himself, and right away I just started watching him because he could potentially be dangerous. He had this, and they were prison tattoos because none of them, he didn't have pictures, he just had ink all over his arm in odd patterns. So there was a prison tattoo. So I watched this guy to make sure everything was okay. He had a short haircut, buzz haircut. Looked like he'd just gotten out of jail. Okay. Anyway, nothing happened, of course. Certainly nothing happened, but I had read the whole room. This guy's old, this guy's big and probably can't function very well. A lot of females, you have to read females as well. A lot of kids in the room. But one thing you do is you need to make sure that you understand all the people in the room just in case something happens. Nothing ever happens, of course, but it's just something that you do. And of course, you do the same thing with your clients. You have to read your clients. You read them when they first come in. So you know a lot about your client just from looking at them when they first come in.
And their body language.
The body language, their nonverbal communication. It'll give you a ton of information.
Even just their appearance, you can tell a lot.
Right, right. The better they look, okay, this is kind of tough. Some people get dressed up to go to the doctor, okay, but this isn't the real person that they are. Doctors don't care because they're not reading that aspect of the individual. This is not the way that they dress. I mean, I don't dress this way when, I don't sit around the house with my bolo tie on and my jacket on. You know, obviously, I'm all dressed up to be at school. But if a client dresses to go to the doctor, it means that they're putting on airs. They're not giving you the actual information that their problem represents. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can read people. Some people dress down when they go to the doctor. The doctor or the counselor, whatever, the dentist, you know, I always dress the same way in the summertime. This is the first, I'm dying. Through the summer, I don't wear sleeves on my shirt. And I don't wear long pants. Okay, so here I am, I'm in long pants with a coat and my shirt's got sleeves on and I'm not used to sleeves. Okay, anyway. Yeah, I didn't wear sleeves all summer. 3 months of shirts that come off, are cut off right at the shoulder. Anyway, and shorts. It's the first time I've had on long pants. I'm dying. I wore long pants last week, so I'm a little acclimated. I'm a little bit better than I would. Anyway, yeah. So if I had put on long pants and a shirt with sleeves when I went in to see the doctor, you know, that would be me putting on airs when I'm up in Iowa. They think I'm a slob in Iowa. And that's me, I guess. If you ever come and visit me at my house, I'll be wearing a pair of shorts and a cut-off shirt. Yeah, don't come by. It's scary. Yeah, smart guy. I ran the trail this weekend and I hurt myself. I did something stupid. You know, they've got, at that end of the trail, they've got things that you can do. There's a log that you walk on.
The obstacle course.
It's an obstacle course,
yeah.
You know, of sorts. And there's one where you run up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and it's high. And so I've done obstacle courses. Well, when I was in the military, I did a lot of obstacle courses. So I'm going, oh, I can do that. Yeah, I pulled something in my heel. Now I'm limping around. Anyway, yeah, I'm 67 years old, and I need to realize that my body's not as flexible as it used to be. Anyway, okay. Anybody have any questions about anything? We need to stop pretty soon. Any questions about anything? The thing about the horses, I mean, it's a good metaphor for your clients because your clients are scared potentially, and you need to be able to read them. So the better cowboy that you are, the better you'll be able to read your clients. They feel like prey. In essence, they feel like prey because they have no power. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not like a predator, they're not like a dog, they're not like a cat. They are more like horses, or I hate to call them sheep, of course, but I think horses is a good metaphor because horses are strong. They have a position because they weigh so much, of course, and I think it's a good metaphor for what your clients are feeling. They do have a strength, but when they come in, they're very vulnerable. And of course, that's the way horses are as well. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. I'm going to use that metaphor over and over again. I have to see if it really works, if it really communicates with people. I was in a classroom full of individuals from Australia and from England and from Canada. A lot of them, it didn't really communicate with them because they'd never been around horses before. But of course, I owned those 2 horses up in Montana. Why did we have horses if I didn't ride? Well, my wife wanted horses. She liked the way they looked. I know, this drove me crazy. We got horses, you know, and of course they're expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I mean the vet bills are expensive. The hay is expensive. We had to buy hay every year in order to feed them through the winter. And of course, winters up in Montana are a lot worse than they are any place else. Even in Canada, Canadians don't have the same type of weather that we have in Montana. Anyway, up in the Arctic Circle, I guess. Anyway.
Wait some more.
So we had horses so that we could feed them. That was about it. And of course, you would have thought, come on. I mean, my wife wanted these horses so that she could see them as she was driving in from work, and they would be grazing. She thought it looked good. I don't know. Anyway, I guess we got to feed them every morning and every evening. It wasn't my wife. We got to go out and feed them. And that one horse, she got stuck in a snowdrift. And she kicked me when she got out, like it was my fault that she got into the snowdrift. She kicked me. And one time, I fed her over here, and she had to walk across a frozen puddle, and she slipped as she was walking across. And it pissed her off so much that she flipped around, and she kicked me right in the side.
Oh my God.
Like it was my fault. I put the ice there. Horses, I swear, there's something wrong with those.